Hey everybody, this is Steven from PopCultureMaven.com. We're back with this week's new comic book reviews. Actually, it's a pretty small week. It's actually a really damn small week. Um, so uh, so yeah, with a small week, you have to hope that there's some good stuff. Unfortunately, yeah, we have some real winners this week. But first, we're gonna I wanted to point out this came out this Captain Action, the classic collection. The Captain Action comics were done by DC in the late '60s, and it was very unusual. I mean, they did do licensed stuff, but this was like a licensed toy, which was unusual at the time, and it only lasted 5 issues. Uh, but the first couple issues were written by Jim Shooter, uh, with artwork by Gil Kane and Wally Wood, and then after the second issue, Gil Kane took over as writer. So it's an interesting, definitely an interesting. Collection. It's very basic. The good thing is, in the first issue, it had a team up with Captain Action and Superman. So the good news is, yes, that first issue is included and has Superman, which is nice because otherwise reprint you can't reprint the second issue because it's the second part of the story. So it's really interesting. I really have to give it to IDW. They did a really nice job. The reprint, they've redone the color in the sense of it still matches the original. It's just a lot cleaner, and it's a really nice looking book. It's definitely great because this stuff has never been reprinted before, because DC obviously didn't want to reprint it because then they'd have to pay a fee for it. But back then they're like, yeah, we're not going to reprint 5 issues. So it's really interesting. So that came out this week. I'd say for if you're a fan of Gil Kane, it's definitely worth picking up. And with the inks of Wally Wood, it's actually a really nice. It's a really nice book. Has a nice introduction by Mark Waid. There's some supplementary material in the back, including the original ads for the toys and stuff. That is really neat to see. So it's a really nice package, and it's only $30, so it's actually kind of a steal. So that's kind of for me the exciting thing for the week. So now we'll get to the regular comics. First up, we have the Phalanx one shot, written and drawn by Jonathan Luna. So what it is Jonathan Luna has he did Ultra, Alex and Ada, and a number of other Image comics. And so when he first wanted to do comics, he was really influenced by Image, the first issues, of Spawn, Youngblood, Wildcats, and all that stuff. So what this is, it's his homage to that 90s beginning of the Image thing. And so what he kind of does, he has this super group that he's created, and it's really quite interesting because it looks and feels like a 90s comic, but but in a lot of respects it still looks like a Jonathan Luna comic, but it's very basic. It's there's a hero in the present day, follows a bad guy into the past, into the 90s. I think it's 1992 to be exact. And so they fight the bad guy, and then she ends up getting stuck in the past. It's a really basic, it's very 90s type thing. There's very little depth to the story, but it's a fun ride. It's a nice little homage to that period and to those comics, and it's kind of a neat nostalgia trip. I mean, there's not a whole lot of meat on the bone there in that respect, but I had a good time with it. It was what it was. I'm a fan of Luna's artwork and writing, so that's why I definitely check it out. And I think it's kind of a fun little ride. It's something with this light of a week. It's definitely kind of worth checking out for that nostalgic factor. Next up, we have The Closet Number One, written by James Tynan IV with artwork by Gavin Fullerton. So what the basic premise is this this young couple is going to move, and their son, who is, say 5 or 6, he says that there's a monster in the closet, and you find out that there really is a monster in the closet. And so that's kind of the basic setup. There's really not a lot here. I will say Tynan does an interesting thing here where there's not a lot of setup here. I mean, you find out that there is actually a monster in the closet, but really the first issue really centers setting up the husband, the dad, and how him and his wife don't really get along. We're not quite sure why they're moving, whether it has to do with the kid or anything like that. I think that's kind of the thing. I think there's some good ideas. It just didn't feel like a really strong first issue. Like, I did get to know the dad-father character in that respect. You got to learn about him, but you really didn't learn much about the wife. And then when he comes home, he's out been drinking. She's pissed because they're supposed to be packing. He got the wrong kind of tape. And it's just, it's kind of like an okay setup. I mean, I think that's where I kind of struggled a little bit with this. I think there's ideas there, but it really wasn't, the first issue wasn't really as compelling as I think it should have been. So that was kind of a struggle. I really did like Fullerton. Fullerton's artwork is actually really nice. It has a really nice style, kind of a gritty, kind of grim style, which does fit the story. It looks really good. I just wasn't really super overwhelmed with the story. I think there's some good ideas, and of course with Tynan writing, I'll definitely give it a couple issues, but like I said, this first issue wasn't really, strong out of the gate. I don't think it was bad. It just wasn't that strong. Next up, we have Justice League Road to Dark Crisis #1. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 stories. So the first one is Superman Nightwing by written by Joshua Williamson, with artwork, pencils by Dan Jurgen, and inks by Norm Rapmund. There's The Flash and Kid Flash written by Jeremy Adams, with artwork by Rosie Camp. There's a Green Lantern Aqualad story written by Chuck Brown, with artwork by Fico Azio. There's Faria, story written by Philip Kennedy Johnson, with artwork by Leila Del Duca. And then the final story of Nocterra and Batgirl, the Stephanie Brown Batgirl, written by Stephanie Phillips and Clayton Henry. So DC's big summer thing is this Dark Crisis, the Justice League is dead. Unfortunately, this quote unquote, kind of prelude is really just almost a complete disaster. If first and foremost, it's completely unnecessary to read for Dark Crisis. So this is only going to be for completists to really buy this. Unfortunately, there was really none of the stories that really stand out great. There was a couple that were good. There was one that was just really not good at all. I'll try to be as kind as I can. The Flash, the Superman Nightwing was kind of okay. It really was just like, Superman and Batman are gone, boo-hoo. Yeah, that's what most of these stories were. They were just boo-hoo stories. Okay, great, they're gone, boo-hoo, whatever. Get on with it. So anyways, the Superman Nightwing was just okay. Normally, Dan Jurgens is a good artist, but really, I kind of felt that it was like he was a little off his game. It wasn't like horrible artwork, but it was really just not. It was kind of okay looking. And once again, this story was just, boo-hoo. The Flash, Kid Flash, the story was kind of okay. Once again, boo-hoo. But really, I really hate to say this, but the artwork was terrible. It was really not good. And it's just really sad because I understand it's not easy to, look, I can't draw myself. It would be stick figures, which would be worse than that. But it really just was like, it was just not good art. And I'm really shocked that this went through because, this is DC. I mean, so anyways, that story was not good. Probably the best one of the bunch was actually the Green Lantern Aqualad. which wasn't particularly, it still had the boohoo, but it actually had a story beyond the boohoo part. And in the artwork by Ozio is actually really nice. It's really the best looking of the bunch. The Faria story was actually interesting. Once again, I don't think it's necessarily to read, but I think it was an interesting backstory. It was one of the two that was kind of better stories. The artwork by Del Duca is actually nice. Another one of the highlights. So those two are really the strongest of a very not good book. The Nocterra Batgirl by Phillips and Clayton Henry. It's fine. It's average. It wasn't actually super boo-hooey, which was kind of a pleasant, palate cleanser at the end of the book. But it did kind of set up, kind of, I guess you could almost say, the secret society of supervillains. But ultimately, this thing is just really not good. Like I said, there's nothing in here that is important to the Dark Crisis at all. Even the best stories are okay. They're nothing to really jump up and down about. The art's really, it's either really good or just really miss. I mean, I will say that, Clayton Henry's, his is nice, the last story, but really it's a sad book. It's not worth the money. This is definitely, do not buy this book. That's how bad it is. It's not worth buying. Next up, we have the new Think #1, written by Greg Horowitz, with artwork by Mike Deodato Jr. So what's weird about this is I wouldn't even really call this a comic story. It's more of a social commentary story, in the sense of it talks about how computers and technology have basically made humans like zombies, and how it's really taken control. And yeah, okay, so that's not really a story. You're just basically, all Horowitz does here is kind of like, oh, here's a timeline of when computers first, and then they, people stayed at their computers, they didn't go out and all this kind of stuff, and then they got phones and this and that, and it's just like, okay, this is nice, but what's the point? And I think that's the thing. It's I have no problem if you're doing this as like a research paper, but this is not a comic story. This is just like kind of a version of history that is just about like computers and technology, and it's like, okay, and what's your point? The only thing that was even remotely interesting about it was Deodato Jr.'s artwork's really nice. But really, it just, I don't understand the point of this. This is not a comic, or this wasn't even a story. It was more of a social commentary. And from what I understand, reading in the back, each issue is going to be different. But if each issue is going to be like this, there's no point in going any further. So that was really a huge disappointment. Nice looking book, but really just not a story. Social commentary. Next up, we have Nice House on the Lake #9, written by James Tynan IV, with artwork by Alvaro Martinez Bueno. Now, once again, okay, we've gotten the bad taste out of our mouth. We finally have hit a good one. This book continues to be fantastic, and we are now learning we've always learned more about Walter, and we're still not quite sure why this set of people has been taken to survive the apocalypse that Walter or aliens have created. We still don't know. But what's interesting is we have now found out that Walter has erased their memory, and so they kind of know what's going on, but they don't quite know what's going on. And that really is quite a flip in the story. And I really have to give it to Tynan on this book. There's some great twists and turns that he keeps doing every issue, while by giving us more about this mystery of what's going on. Plus we continue to learn about each one of the characters, and it's just one of those slow burns, but it's absolutely amazing. And it's really, this book is just stunning. I cannot recommend this book enough. It's really good. And then you have Martinez Bueno's artwork, which is just gorgeous. This is a great looking book. It's a great story. It's something you should be picking up. I every issue is just a sheer joy, and I cannot wait to not only see how it ends, but go back and read the whole thing again, because it's really just an amazing book. You really need to be buying it. It's highly recommended. Next up, we have Demons 3, written by Scott Snyder with pencils by Greg Capullo, and inks by Jonathan Galpin. So this is the final part of the story. And it doesn't really, I will say, it doesn't really end. I mean, this particular part of the story ends, but there could be more, which I'm assuming they're planning on doing more. Now, this was originally a Comixology original. And so it has, this is the first time it's been in print in comics, because Dark Horse made a deal with Comixology to print this stuff. Now, a lot of those originals they've printed in like trades. This is the first one they've done as like single issues. And I think that's actually a good thing, because I'm sure there'll be a trade of this collection, but it's nice for people, you know, if maybe they don't want to pay all that up front. Anyways, so that's kind of the story behind it. So we now have, they're waiting for more of the special rock that comes down so they can make more swords and stuff to slay the demons and stuff. So this is kind of the conclusion. I don't really want to give anything away, but it does wrap up the story, but it does continue. I have to give Snyder, you know, look, this is not the most mind-blowing story I've ever read, but I think it's a good, solid story. He does some really interesting things. It's a good, nice science fiction story. You know, it has monsters. It has, you know, and stuff like that. So it's a lot of fun. It doesn't try to be more than it is, which I think is also a plus. Capullo's artwork's really nice. It's a great-looking book. It's one of those. It's a good, solid book. I wouldn't say it's the most amazing thing I've ever read, but I enjoyed it for what it was, and I think that's all it was trying to be. So I think it's still worth checking out. So next up, we have Step by Bloody Step number 4, written by Cy Spurrier, with artwork by Matthias Berga. So this is the final issue. So I have to admit, when I first read this issue, I was kind of like, okay, this kind of doesn't make any sense. So, well, first of all, the whole book is silent. There's no English dialogue. There's times where people speak, but it's an alien language you're not supposed to understand. You just know that they speak. But what's interesting is that it's when after I let it sit with me, then I went back and read it again, and I think it's one of those, first of all, I think the story is meant to be read really in one shot. Now, there is a hardcover that's coming out like in a month or so that collects all 4 issues. But what was interesting is it's a story that goes in a complete circle. Like, the beginning is the end is the beginning. That's really what makes it kind of interesting. And like I said, at first, you know, once again, reading it monthly, there's kind of that disconnect between like each issue that you wouldn't have if you read it all at once, which is really what this story is. It's one giant story. So actually, once I let it sit, and once I kind of figured out what Spurrier was doing, I'm like, okay, this makes sense. I get it now. But once again, I still think this should be read in one shot. That being said, I really did enjoy it. I love the fact that the whole thing is a silent story, which is absolutely amazing, because it's really hard to do. But not only is it hard to do with, you know, because Spurrier has to write a script to just, you know, describe everything that needs to be told visually, but you have to have an artist that really can bring that to life. And Bagara just nails it. This has really been a gorgeous looking book. It's just absolutely stunning looking. So when the hardcover comes out, I do recommend getting this book. And I think for a lot of people, when you sit down and read it in one shot, it's gonna work so much better than having it come out monthly. So it's a recommendation, but if you haven't read it yet, I would definitely pick up the collection when it comes out. That's going to be the best way to read it. And lastly, this week we have Firepower number 21, written by Robert Kirkman with artwork by Chris Samnee. So once again, this is not an issue where you just jump in, but I always want to remind you of books that really are that good. I have been reviewing this book from day one, and now we're on issue 21. And it really continues to be that good. And I think what has really made this book so great is how, I mean, there's the big battle. There's a dragon that destroys like a giant ship out in the ocean, like a big naval ship. There's all that, but really what has made this book so good is the characters. Deep down, it's just the simple things. So one of the things that they have to do is they have to find the other senseis so they can kind of form this army to fight the snake gods, or the snake god. So that's what they're trying to do, because obviously the dragon's out there. This is bad. This is really bad. Like, they're going to take over the world. And so by hopefully trying to get all the senseis together, they can battle it. And it's just really, it's the smaller story driven parts that really make this book so good. Now the big fight action scenes are all great and everything. And of course, Samnee just visually just nails everything. But it's the really subtle, the story elements, the small story elements that work so well in this book. And that's why I continue to review it, because it's really, you need to check it out. It's really a wonderful book. Honestly, I think it's some of Kirkman's best work. And I think a lot of that has to do with the collaboration of with him and Chris Samnee. Because Chris Samnee himself, he writes Jonah and the Impossible Monsters, which is really well done. So this definitely, you can feel the collaborative effort on this book, and I still think it's well worth checking out. So that's gonna do it this week. Sadly, it was not only a small week, but there was just some not very good books. And some real misses, but there were still a few worth picking up. And once again, I for nostalgia, the Captain Action Classic Collection was really the big win for me this week. So that's going to do it. As always, public service announcement. I get all my comics at Pulp Fiction Comics in Long Beach, California. Ryan runs a great store. Annie and Eduardo, Wendy and Derek, they all help out. It's just a really good store. They have a great pull service. They offer discounts on new comics with the pull service. You get 30% off of trades and graphic novels. It's a great store if you live in Long Beach or the surrounding areas. If you live in the LA area, there's a sister store, Pulp Fiction Culver City. Same name, different, run by Chris and her team. Another great store in the LA area. It's they're both really good stores. They do the same thing. They offer same discounts. But as always, please support your local comic shop. It's very important to support them. They're a small business, so 99% of them are single owners. So support your local comic shops, and just make sure that if you have a pull service, don't let your books pile up. It's not good. So that's going to do it. And as always, we end our show with please be kind. Things are tough in the world. We all know how tough things are, but being kind can go a long way. It's as dark as sometimes things get, being kind can really help. So just be kind to each other out there. Take care of yourselves. Stay safe. And just take care of yourselves. And that's going to do it this week. This is Steven from popculturemaven.com. Please like and subscribe, and please share our videos. and just take care of yourselves. So we'll see you again next week. Hopefully we'll have a better week with some more stronger titles, but definitely take care of yourselves, and we'll see you next week. All right, bye-bye.